Hello and good evening. Thank you for joining us. Today we are going to have some post-election conversations and we're going to really have some communication strategies for productive dialogue and for conflict resolution. My name is Yolanda Jackson. I am a doctoral student in the College of Education and Human Services here at Seton Hall University, and I'm so excited to be joining all of you and our great panelists in this discussion, a timely discussion, a necessary discussion for the state of our country, and of course, for the things that are going to happen at our university. Our panelists include, and so we're going to start off with our first panelist, which is Professor Angela Kitsonis. She's an instructor in the College of Communication and the Arts here at Seton Hall University. We also have Dr. Mary Kelly, who is a staff psychologist and also in the Counseling and Psychological Services Department here at the university. And we also have Dr. Juan Rios, who is the director of our social work program. And we also have Ms. Julia Nichols, the Student Government Association representative and our president. I'm so excited to be joining these great panelists today. I feel like these conversations are going to be so necessary, so enlightening, and I look forward to learning with all of you and being a part of this great discussion. So I would like to start with Ms. Nichols. Julia, can you tell us how you are feeling? So it's the day after the election, so many things that we are thinking about. How are you and how are you feeling? And this question is going to be for all of our panelists, but we'll start with Julia.
Thanks, Yolanda. I would say it's definitely been a difficult past 48 hours. I'm not going to lie. The anxiety and tensions are very high. I know I had classes today and we went through discussions of, how we're feeling as well. And we can definitely, read the room and know that this is a really difficult time. So I know at least for today, I just had a nice cup of tea. I went on a long walk. So it's been definitely difficult, but we're getting through the day and, there's nothing we can do at this point except wait, which is oftentimes the hardest part, but overall, well, thank you.
And Dr. Rios, can you let us know how you are and how you're feeling today?
Yeah, it's been a tough 48 hours as well, but something that we're going to go into later on has really been helping is establishing boundaries and recognizing how much I can take at a time. So that's really allowing me to be in a really good space right now. So I'm actually pretty content. So.
And Dr. Kelly, can you share your thoughts and how you are and how you're feeling this evening?
Dr. Kelly, you're muted.
Yes, thank you. I think that whatever I'm feeling is exacerbated by lack of sleep over the last couple of days, but definitely feeling struggling with a lot of different emotions, feeling a little disheartened, a little confused, hopeful, a whole range of emotions. Trying my best to take things 1 minute at a time sometimes.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. And Professor K, can you share with us how you are and how you're feeling this evening?
How am I feeling? I'm feeling like I'm bracing myself. I'm feeling like I have to temper my energy so I can maintain it for the long haul. I feel like this is a long game. And I'm also thinking about my students who have identities that are walking in identities that are feeling like they're creating a safety plan right now. So I'm thinking about those students and how best I can show up right for them in this moment.
Thank you all for sharing. And yes, I share in all of your sentiments that this is a very challenging time. There are so many things that are up in the air. And students and even professionals and just citizens that are managing intersectionality, this can be a tough period of time. But so Dr. Kelly and Professor K, can you guys share what are some of the barriers to authentic communication? And I appreciate all of the panelists coming in and sharing their true feelings, sharing what they're really thinking. So what are some of the barriers to authentic communication around the issues that we are dealing with now?
So I'll start that off. I'd like to start with the basics. I'm going to approach this question from sort of a logical way of looking at it. If we think about the nature of communication, all communication starts internally or intrapersonally, right? So our thoughts, our opinions, our attitudes, our knowledge really kind of help us to decide what it is we want to say. Now, there's a whole host of factors that will help us to determine how we're going to say it. But for the purposes of our discussion today, I'd like to focus on mood state and emotional arousal. I think those are very pertinent to the discussion that we're having today and we'll be looking to have over the next days and weeks. So I want to be very clear that I'm not saying that we should not have emotions about this. I'm not saying people shouldn't be emotional in their speech. Emotions are a great thing. We need them. They drive us forward. They give us information. They motivate our behavior. But if we feel the emotional arousal too intensely, that can also inhibit our ability to communicate in a clear, effective way, which then, by definition, then would keep us from communicating authentically as well. So why does that happen? Well, I'm sure everyone has had the experience of blanking out in a situation where you feel stressed. And what's happening is the amygdala, which is a structure in the brain that is responsible for keeping, one of its functions is to help keep us safe from any perceived threats or dangers. It instructs the brain to start the flow of oxygen to the limbs, the arms and the legs, so that we can get into flight or fight or freeze mode. So our brain is trying to protect us. The amygdala is the center of the intense emotion that's trying to protect us. So obviously, if the blood flow is being directed toward the arms and the legs, it's being deflected or what's undirected? It's being directed away from other organ systems like your digestive system and certainly from your brain as well. So when that happens, the prefrontal cortex, which is where in our brain we do our thinking and planning and organizing and problem solving, it's getting less oxygen, so it becomes a little less efficient. Plus you got the amygdala firing there, which is interfering. So that's why the intense emotion can then inhibit how we are communicating, like it just did to me when I couldn't think of the words I wanted to say. So what do we do about this? Well, these are just some little strategies and techniques you might use. This might sound simple, but stop and take a deep breath. Like that. Try to breathe from your diaphragm. Try to make the exhalation longer than the inhalation. Your blood pressure actually goes down a little bit when you exhale. So that helps to initiate the relaxation response. Another thing we can do is, we call this the name it to tame it strategy. We can sit back. We can try to describe to ourselves in non-judgmental language what it is we're experiencing in this moment. I notice I'm feeling really fired up. I notice I'm feeling really nervous. I notice that my stomach has a knot in it. I notice my palms are sweating. And what this does is help us to take a step back from the emotional and physical experience of the anxiety and put us back into those prefrontal lobes where we can get them back online so we can think more clearly. So those are some of the things those are a couple of things that we can do. Like I said, we don't want to get rid of the emotions. We don't want to there's no emotion that we should not be feeling. We feel what we feel. We don't really use should and feel in the same sentence. But the bottom line is, we know that in order to communicate effectively, We can communicate more clearly and authentically when we understand how our brain sometimes seems to want to trip us up. But if we remember that your brain is always trying to help you and always trying to keep you safe, we can even do this thing called Thank You Brain, where you acknowledge that your brain is doing the best job it can to keep you safe, right? And I'm not saying this to be funny or sarcastic. What we do. If we thank our brains, we're acknowledging that our brains are doing their best job to keep us safe, and then we can return to our best job of communicating clearly, authentically what we want to say.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kelly. And we're going to hear from Professor K. I want to encourage everyone to please use the Q&A function that we have, so that way, as we're having this dialogue, if questions come to your mind, please send them in the Q&A. Professor K, we'd love to hear from you. Again, the question is, what are some of the barriers of authentic communication?
Yolanda, thank you for the question. You're doing a great job, and thank you so much for putting in the effort and bringing us all here. And all of you who are watching, send your questions in the chat, but also your affirmations, your comments, all the snaps, all the echoes, put those in the chat too. Good relationships, healthy relationships require communication and trust. And there is a massive distrust right now. And that relationship, that requires relationship repair. And that's going to take a really long time. And the effort to participate in that, it has to be earned. For a lot of people right now, a lot of people are feeling like there's no good reason to trust. There's a massive betrayal. So we're going to have to name it, what a lot of people are feeling. Communication requires psychological safety. Psychological safety requires communication. And you can't have psychological safety when there's cognitive dissonance at play, to create a lot of what we're seeing in the current moment. So there are a lot of people that are asking things like, I don't understand how this is happening, or I don't understand what this is like, or I don't understand what our differences are. There is a rude, a language that we might use is a rude awakening. So in order for communication to happen, we're going to have to be really honest about all the ways that we got here. So this is us. So the first way that we're going to get to communicating with each other is for us to have the same conversation. So if we're not looking at how we got here, whatever the here might be, the same, then we're having very different conversations. So we're not communicating. We can't communicate because we're not even seeing the same thing. So I think right now in this moment, we have to do the work. That's the long haul work for us to get to, we got to talk about the same thing in the same way. So we could hear and we could listen to each other, and then starts the repair, the work that goes into it. So we could eventually get to communicating. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kelly and Professor K, for your sentiments on our first question. We have a question in the Q&A that actually coincides with the second question that we have. So Zoe asked, if we accidentally do not check our emotions before speaking, what is the best way to correct or come back from that situation? And so the other question that we have to the panelists, and we're going to take this over to Dr. Rios, when students or faculty members find themselves in a difficult conversation, what are some techniques or strategies you suggest that they employ? And that again sides with Zoe's question of like, okay, and so if you find yourself at a place where you haven't had the opportunity to check yourself emotionally before speaking, how do you kind of rebound from that? So Dr. Rios, if you will share with us.
Yeah, thank you so much, Yolanda. And I highly value my colleagues here on the panel, and it both beautifully sort of explained some very, very important points in reference to communication. So I want to take a step back for one moment and just notice how we began this meeting. We began this meeting with a check-in, right? So you already framed how this communication engagement is going to happen, right? Because one, by you asking how are we doing, this open-ended question, makes us sort of sit back and roll our eyes up and say, well, how am I really doing, right? Because we could always say fine, or we could answer with authenticity and say, you know what, I'm not doing okay. And how do we hold space for that when we're not okay? Because as you know, it's instinctively we want everybody to be okay, right? How could I jump in and fix this? So this paternal side of us, this compassionate side of us, balancing our divine masculine and our divine feminine within us is that we want things to be well and good. So, it's okay to sit with that uncomfort when someone's not okay, and just simply by holding space. So, one, by noticing how we started today and creating an environment where our feelings are welcome, no matter what the diversity of those feelings may be, and being able to ask that question of where we are, um, prioritizes the humanistic aspect of every relationship, right? That as human beings, we're meeting each other from that perspective that, where are we? It's kind of this, it's really based on a sanctuary model by Sandra Bloom and how we create safe spaces. So as faculty members and students, when we have these type of dialogue, we have to be very mindful about how we're framing the environment in which the conversation will be held. And that sitting with the uncomfort, as we call it in every space, right, is it's okay. And that being able to, as Dr. Kelly mentioned, notice our somatic responses and what our body is telling us. Our body is our best guide. Okay, so that goes into whether we even decide to engage in this talk and say, you know what, I'm not in a good space right now, and what I need right now is just to kind of sit in silence, and that's okay. What I need right now is not to be able to communicate. What I need is I'm not going to turn the TV. I'm not going to go on Twitter for the next 2 hours, and that is okay because the more in touch we are with our body, as Dr. Kelly mentioned, is our heart's racing, our amygdala's firing, all these things. Notice that first before any engagement, because if we don't have sort of a good gauge as to where I am, then we could forget about having any types of discussion. It's just going to end bad really fast. So establishing those very, very clear boundaries by understanding, one, do I need physical boundary and physical space right now that, this may not be, I don't want to go to class today. This may not be the conversation I want to have with my professors over and over and over in every single class about whether it's the election or about sort of the global crises that are happening at this moment, that I have to be in a great space. And then two, there's the emotional kind of boundary. It's the type of when you're talking to your partner, and this is where we're at a difference of pathways, or with our family members, right? Thanksgiving is coming up, so that's always an interesting conversation when we get around the table, right? So being very clear about, one, intentionality, right? What is this a conversation that you want to engage with this person? Where I am as well. And then once you establish sort of where you are in all those spaces somatically in our bodies, and whether there could actually be a healthy conversation too is another component. And then three, recognizing that when we're in these dialogues, if we cannot articulate the other person's perspective with comprehension, then all we have is a debate. And does that really drive connection, or does that drive disconnection? So just to answer it very quickly and short, just kind of summarizing the question: one, in the classroom, being mindful of how we frame what safe spaces are, and honoring each other in that way. Okay, so when faculty members decide to have these conversations, whether it's about race or where you're inviting students' feelings, faculty members have to do their own work to be comfortable in the uncomfort. And as Dr. Kelly and both Dr. K mentioned, in that the wide range of emotionality that's present. And when we invite that, we have to be prepared to sit with that and ensure that that trust is built in the classroom. Because if you're a professor and all semester long you haven't spoken about these things, but all of a sudden you just want to pop up last minute because you want to check a box with DEI, nobody's going to believe you, nor are they going to open up to you about that. Or it's that inauthenticity that really, students see right through it. So being mindful of how you frame it all throughout. 2, noticing and keeping your boundaries, that what you need at that moment, what you need right now before any engagement. And lastly, 3, just being mindful of whether these conversations that I'm having with this person is worth the mental real estate I'm giving it. And I'll pause there.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rios. And I'm going to restate the question, and I would love Julia to weigh in on this discussion as well. When students or faculty members find themselves in a difficult conversation, what are some techniques or strategies you suggest they employ? So Julia, can you share with us from your perspective? And thank you, Dr. Rios, again, reminding us that in those spaces, some of the strategies are to frame the conversations in a particular way, to honor all parties that are in the conversation, and to learn to be comfortable in uncomfortable conversations and to sit in it for a little while. And acknowledging that when we come to those spaces and we come to those conversations, there are some already embedded biases that we come to the conversation with, everyone, regardless as to what side they're on. And so, Julia, if you can share with us your perspective on this particular question.
Absolutely. And I think what's been stated thus far has been absolutely phenomenal. So just to add to it in the slightest bit, at least for me personally as a student, so representing definitely that student perspective, is recognizing what I'm looking to get out of a conversation. So maybe if I just want to vent to someone about my feelings, so maybe it's not that I'm looking to learn from the conversation versus having an actual conversation that you want to engage with in another person about a political discussion. Because I think differentiating between the two is extremely important, because you need to decide before getting into these conversations whether it is with friends, whether it's, your professors, family members, if you're trying to learn from the situation, make that very clear that you want to engage in that conversation, versus maybe you just want to rant, because I know I definitely have those days, we all do, where we really just want to express those frustrations. If you're not wrong to feel that way, because I know some days, okay, I really want to learn about a particular issue, and then some days I'm just really frustrated, or maybe I'm really happy and want to celebrate something going on in politics at a given moment. I think recognizing within yourself maybe how you're feeling about a different issue and what you need, and then letting those around you know what you're needing in that moment, which is really important right now. And then just for emphasis, there are a ton of different resources that the university has in place. Whether that's CAPS, whether it is the individuals here, I know professors have been extremely welcoming to talk. I'm definitely biased as a diplomacy major, so we're all talking, politics, things like that right now. But even if that's not necessarily your specialization, I'm sure anyone in the poli-sci department would love to chat with you. I just really want to be open. You don't have to feel alone in your feelings, unless of course you want to. That could be a preferred coping mechanism. But there are a variety of different strategies and resources that you have at your fingertips, so don't feel isolated or alone in these situations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julia, for sharing your perspective from the student perspective and highlighting how important it is to use the resources that are available to students on campus during this time, whether that is a faculty member, whether that's going to CAPS, and making sure that you allow yourself to be present in those spaces and what it is that you're feeling, because that's important. And even offering the perspective of, and if you don't want to connect to someone and you just need to process for yourself, that also is an important perspective, and a good strategy even sometimes before going into a conversation. Sometimes just, again, following up with even what Dr. Rios said, sometimes sitting in it means that you're sitting in it and it's a conversation, a one-of-one, just you and yourself. And so we have some thoughts in the Q&A that people are thankful for this discussion, and they feel that everyone has been so respectful up until this point. So thank you so much. And so, Dr. Kelly, if you would weigh in on this question as well. When students or faculty members find themselves in a difficult conversation, what are some strategies and techniques you suggest they employ? I know that we've had some suggestions already by Dr. Rios and also by Julia, but if there's anything else you would like to contribute to this particular question, we would love to hear from you.
Well, I'd be happy to. I'd like to present a short 3-part conflict resolution model. I mean, there's tons of conflict resolution models out there, but this one happens to be, I think, nice and succinct. First part of it, and I think Dr. Rios has, and of course, Professor Cave also touched on this, is really having accurate empathy for the other person's point of view. You're not really going to get too far in you're having a difficult discussion and it escalates into a conflict. You're not going to get too far if you really don't have any idea of what the other person is feeling. So how do we express empathy? And it might be expressing empathy for the person's position in a position that you really don't agree with. So how do we get there? Well, we use our active listening skills. As a psychologist, that's one of the things that we do. We use our active listening skills, but they're certainly accessible skills that anyone can develop. And what does that mean? It means really listening on a deep level, without distractions, without trying to keep an open mind, trying to not have any preconceived notions of what this person might be saying or thinking. Listening to understand rather than to be understood. Asking questions, reflecting back what you think you hear. Giving that person the space to express what they want to express. It's not always easy, is it? But we can usually identify, if not with the person's outlook on life or what their philosophies are, but we can almost always identify with feelings and emotions. So that is a way also to develop empathy. So when we try to develop empathy for the other person's viewpoint, and we express it to them. I hear you saying X, Y, and Z. I understand that this is how you're feeling about this. But then the next step is stating your own needs, your own viewpoint, your own, how this issue is affecting you, right? It helps to use I statements rather than you're making me feel X, Y, and Z. People generally get pretty defensive about that. When we use I statements, I feel fill in the blank when you blank, right? That at least you're telling that other person how their words or actions or behaviors are affecting you. No one can argue with that. No one can say, no, you don't feel that way. You feel what you feel. It gives you an opportunity to express that. Now, whether or not the person's going to change their viewpoint or their behavior based on how it makes you feel, that's up to them. But all that you have control over in that situation is communicating how you are feeling. Right? So you have expressing empathy for the other person's point of view, stating what your own view is. And then the third part of this model is suggesting what the resolution should be. What does that look like? Here's what I'm suggesting. So I hear you saying this, but I'm feeling that. So here's what I think we can do about that. What are your ideas? Always leaving that open for the other person to contribute something to the discussion too, and really be ready to negotiate, unless it's something that you just can't negotiate. I mean, we all have our things that are, they're non-starters, right? But using this model, like I said, it's brief, it's succinct. I think that it can be helpful in having if you find yourself, despite putting up these barriers and boundaries and not barriers, boundaries as to what you're willing to talk about at any particular time, or I'm not feeling it right now. But if you find yourself involved in one of these types of conflicts, these are some things that you can do to try to mitigate that conflict and who knows, maybe even create some resolution.
Dr. Kelly, that was awesome. And you gave us 3 points that we should consider in these conversations, which I felt really actually answered a lot of the questions that we see in the Q&A, which were conversations in terms of how do you manage when you're not on the same page with somebody in these types of conversations that you're speaking with? How do you manage when you have conflict and opposing sides with family members or with friends? or when you're trying to repair trust in terms of conversations that might have gone left and you can't seem to agree. So you've encouraged us to have the accurate amount of empathy for the particular situation and be able to empathize from the people that are sharing. And with that, that includes attentive listening. And then additionally, to state our perspectives, but using the statement of "I feel when you," so that way it's not directed at the person directly, but we're expressing what it is that we feel as a result of whatever the situation is that's going on. And then to suggest resolution, so that way it's just not a back and forth conversation, tension upon tension, that ultimately on both sides we want to get to a place of resolve. And so I think that those were great points that you provided us in terms of techniques and strategies, and other panelists as well. You know, Julia and Dr. Rios, thank you so much for sharing your techniques and strategies to really kind of getting through the difficult conversations, because there are so many of them that have already been had and so many more to come. And so our next question, how can students or community members create brave spaces for folks to share ideas? And how do you engage with someone from you have fundamental differences with? So Professor K, we're going to start with you with this this question, and we'd love to hear from you.
All right, thank you for that. Let's get into it. 4 guidelines. Build community. You have to have a relationship first. I'm going to amplify something that Dr. Rios had said before. Build community before diving in. Provide vocabulary. How are we going to have this conversation? Put in the time. Make sure you have enough time, sufficient time for this, to dedicate to this conversation and this process, and ask for help. You do not have to center you are the expert in your fields. If you are not an expert in this particular piece, that is okay. Approach this with a little bit of humility and ask for help when you need it. So first piece, for those who want to check in with their students, I'm going to be real practical and real functional in the next few minutes in my sharing with you, Yolanda, all right? Just for those faculty members who want to check in, but don't necessarily know or want to position themselves in having this conversation, but want to acknowledge the temperature in the room, one thing that you could do is ask students to drop it in the chat, drop an emoji in the chat about how you're feeling right now. So this way you are acknowledging what's happening here, right? You're acknowledging feelings, you're acknowledging the whole person, and you're allowing them to bring that into the space without needing language to describe what that is. You can ask them, drop a meme that resonates for you right now, and let that speak for them. So that is the language that people are that is one language that people are using right now to express themselves, and you can capitalize off that to lay off the edge and not center anybody, right? You don't have to put your camera on, you don't have to unmute yourself, but you could still participate in this way, in this conversation. To intentionally have this conversation now, you have to be willing. You have to get consent from all parties that this is what we're going to talk about, and this is how we're going to talk about it. Create a community agreement and make sure everyone consents. Work on it until everyone does. Have a listening session, not a conversation. Hold space for each other with humility. As an instructor, show the kind of vulnerability that you want your students to share. So a listening session might be a story circle where everyone takes a turn for 1 minute to answer a prompt. The prompt might be, what is it you want everyone to know about what you're feeling right now? And allow whatever resonates, whatever bubbles up to come into the room. And the point about a listening session is there's no crosstalk. You're not commenting, you're not judging, you're not trying to fix, you're not trying to solve. You're literally there for a fixed amount of time, listening to whatever bubbles up to a prescribed prompt. Another thing that you might want to share with your student, write a 6-word story about the election. What that does is we're giving containers, very manageable containers, but it provides sort of a holding for people to express themselves in a particular way that is manageable. Crowdsource with anonymity. Maybe people want to have this conversation, but they don't want to do it publicly. Create a Google slide. Share it, share the link in the chat. Everyone goes there and ask, let the prompt be, what are you curious about right now? What questions do you have? And let everyone type those questions, type those talking points anonymously, and then work together to address it. Not as an expert, but we're working together to address some of these questions that were crowdsourced anonymously. I'll share something that I'm doing in class for myself, all right? So we do oral history projects in my class, and we follow a StoryCorps model. So just right now, what you can do, and I'll read it slow in case anybody wants to copy this down, you can create breakout rooms and give your students these prompts. Is there someone with whom you disagree but still respect? So we're talking about the issue without being in it. Was there a moment, an event, or a person in your life who shaped your political views? So ask people without being defensive, without interrogating them, ask them, was there a moment, a person in your life, or an event that shaped your political views? How did you come to believe what it is that you believe? So now the conversation isn't me against you. My conversation is, I want to know about how you arrived at where you are. Ask this last question. Do you feel misunderstood by people who have different beliefs than you? I'm going to say that one more time before I start in my radio. Do you feel misunderstood by people who have different beliefs than you? Let them talk it out. And then bring everybody back into the main room and ask, was there anything that resonated? Was there anything that was surprising, moving, or interesting in what you heard? That's it. Thank you.
Professor K. Gems.
Let's do that. We'll do that. That'll be the next project.
I have to get out a good moderator character for about 2 seconds to let you know that these are the gems. And so we also have some affirmations for our panelists in the Q&A, where we have some folks that are saying that they really appreciate the step-by-step instructions, right? What I used to call 3 points in a poem. Like if you give folks step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, this is what you need to do. And so you and Dr. Kelly have done some great jobs in doing that and offering the step-by-steps, and Dr. Rios and Julia as well. So we know that that's something that really works for our students. And additionally, there was another affirmation for the idea of saying, opening up the class and just saying, put a meme in the chat in terms of how you feel. Put your emoji up there and let us know, give us a scale of 1 to 10 where you are today. I think that is one of the best icebreakers at the beginning of a class. There's some of my professors in my doctoral program that do that as well. And so I appreciate that, because it allows the professor to understand the tone before they even begin the class session. But you brought up some really great points, and I wanted to hit the 4 points that you brought up at the very beginning. Build community before you start the challenging conversations, right? And dare I even say build trust, right? Because what happens is, if there's a community that you've built and there is trust that even happens in conversations, someone that I trust, even if they say something I disagree with, I'm clear that they're not saying it with malicious intent. And so now I'm at a place where I'm more open to listen and receive what it is that they say, and understand the perspective in which they're trying to offer. Your second point was to provide vocabulary. And I think that that is so important, so important nowadays, because a lot of times people might be using colloquialisms and things that they hear and don't know that it's not appropriate for them to use those things when the time comes for a larger conversation. And that respect is at the forefront, and something that's not negotiable in these conversations, and put in the time, right? So the minute that someone is ready to bring up a difficult conversation, and like you said, if we're building trust and we're building community and the conversation feels rushed, I feel as if you're not really concerned about what my perspective is, and I don't really get the opportunity to hear the other perspectives and viewpoints that exist in the room. So I thought that was a really great point. And number 4, ask for help. Ask for help. It is so simple, but oftentimes people will prefer to go into conversations without humility. And even if you believe that you do know, even if you believe that you've been in so many different conversations, or you feel that your identity alone allows you to go into a conversation with all the knowledge and all the experience, I can express to you that in my intersectionality as female, as African American, okay, and then the class that I live in, I am learning so much from conversations like this. So it doesn't matter how many boxes you check off, how many spaces you believe that you are in, there's always room to learn, and there's always room to ask for help. I love the other points that you brought in. I'm going to go through these quickly. To approach it with humility, and even the question of, do you feel that when you are in these different conversations that you are often misunderstood? Right? That is something that those are questions that people rarely ask, but be willing and open in these conversations. Host listening sessions. I love the storytelling. I think that is something that's so important. And there's so many different communities and traditions that show us that storytelling is so imperative to hold on to our history and our future. And so storytelling is really amazing because we get to just hear someone share. And like you said, not for the response, just for them to share. So thank you again for what it is that you shared. I know this question was directed at Professor K, but Dr. Rios, do you want to get into this conversation and share about how do we create brave spaces for folks to share ideas, and how do you engage with someone that you have fundamental differences with?
Yeah, sure. I'll keep it short because Dr. K, as always, I'm going to end up taking her class real soon next semester. So you're going to have one extra student jumping in next semester because I love how you frame classrooms and build space, which is beautiful. Only thing I would add to any of that, which is so beautifully said, is something that actually what we're doing in our classrooms now, with framing, having more contemplative pedagogical frames in the classroom. And my colleague, a few of my colleagues actually do this at the university. Peter Savastano, Dr. Nicotera, is what we sort of start every classroom with a short meditation. The reason why sort of that has been helpful in engaging dialogue, especially in the classroom, is that as Dr. Kelly mentioned, it helps us be tuned in with what our body is saying and setting a frame and an intention from a compassionate perspective first, right? And this kind of goes into one of the other areas that we were talking about as far as how do we have productive dialogue, where sometimes we just have to have space, as Dr. K mentioned, and create a container, which sometimes means, in the words of Hamilton, Aaron Burr, talk less, smile more. And sometimes we just have to do less talking and be more present. And it's everything from recognizing where we are, but also our nonverbals, which includes being able to soften our gaze. Because I could be here listening, but if all this is here, all this is here, all this is here, that type of disconnection is just gonna be toxic for the engagement. So when we think about engaging with folks who have differences of opinion, being mindful that your face tells it all. My mom, for example, I know what she's saying through her face because she can't hide anything. Her face is all here and here and here. But being mindful that our nonverbals also tell a story if we're authentically, truly listening. You can be quiet, but if you're everywhere with your gaze and with your frown, it further fuels that conflict. So just being mindful of our one, nonverbals, two, reminding that as faculty members, tuning in to creating contemplative spaces in the classroom where we cultivate compassion. Was mentioned earlier about having non-judgmental attitude, perspective, and setting intentions are very important into how everything else follows after that. And I love, love, love what Angie mentioned about, sorry, Dr. K mentioned about having that humility, because many of us, even as faculty members, we avoid these conversations because we feel lost and we don't know how do we really answer this, and what's gonna happen if I can't contain where this may go. And having that sense of humility shows bravery and strength. And like the words of James Baldwin, not everything faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed if it's not faced. So it's beautiful that we're having this dialogue. So those are just the points I would continue to add.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rios. I appreciate that. And so we have another question from the chat, and we're going to direct this towards Dr. Kelly. How would you recommend opening up a discussion or easing others' tensions?
Well, I think this again will be a short, but I hope sweet answer. I think one of the key things we can do in a situation like this is be really transparent. Open up the discussion by talking about what process that's going through your mind. It might look something like, I'm sitting here deciding, should I bring this up to you or should I not? Because I'm aware that this is a very kind of touchy subject, but I really do want to have this conversation with you. So in other words, you're just sort of narrating the thought process that's going on in your brain, making it transparent, which I think then lets the other person know that you have feelings about it too, and you're not afraid. You're being authentic. You're not afraid to express that. Yeah, I'm having some doubts. I wonder if we're going to be able to do this, which then invites them to obviously express their hesitations as well. Short and sweet.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kelly. This conversation has been informative. I just want to also, again, always provide affirmation to you all that the chat and the students that are all online are just sharing that they really appreciate your perspectives, all of the things that you're bringing into the conversation. A question that I will now take to Julia. How can we have discourse and dialogue with respect and civility? So in those conversations that are really challenging but necessary, how do we make sure that they're respectful and that they're civil?
Absolutely, and thank you for the question. I mean, truly, like, if I'm being honest, this is something I'm still learning myself. So we're in this together. Whoever asked this question, I'm sure a lot of you are feeling the same way. Like, this is something I'm been trying really hard to learn recently, and at least, my personal strategy, I guess, and granted this might not, work for everyone, we all have different coping mechanisms and things like that, is really just trying to understand where that person is coming from and know that it's just different viewpoints. And I think this goes back to the point I made earlier. If you're going into the conversation trying to prove your own point or trying to prove your own beliefs while not listening to the other person, then maybe it's time to take a step back from that conversation, and then that's no longer a conversation. Or even myself, when you're engaging in political discussion and the whole time maybe the other person is talking, you're thinking of the best way to argue that person's point, and I'm like very guilty of this. You know, maybe it's like arguments with my parents or things like that. Like, you know, we all do this. Maybe that's also a time to take a step back and away from the situation. And that's really the biggest part is, you know, we all can't help our feelings and our emotions if we're getting angry with someone else for their political beliefs. Like, you're not wrong in feeling that way. But at a certain point, we do need to take a step back and we do need to recognize the way that we're feeling. And, you know, oftentimes recognize that the person we're talking to is someone that we care about, and you can't, you know, hate or have adverse feelings for that person because, you know, ultimately when it comes down to it, we're all people. When this is, you know, it's a very contentious topic, obviously, that we're discussing, you know, politics, especially in this current political environment. But I definitely encourage you, you know, also recognize what we have control over and what we don't have control over. At least personally, when I feel extremely frustrated with the political climate, you know, as a 20-year-old college student, it's really easy to feel powerless and really easy to feel as though I have no control over the world around me, especially in between like papers and a job and, you know, trying to make sure that I don't go into copious amounts of student debt. Like, you know, that's kind of where like our priorities seem to be. But I just really want to emphasize to everyone here, you know, regardless of your political beliefs, there's always a way that you can act on your surroundings. And there's always a way for you to make a difference in your community, whether it's your Seton Hall community, where you're from and originate. You have that power to make a difference. And that's truly what's helped me, because even if I feel frustrated with people that I interact with, you know, the current political climate, being able to redirect those frustrations into something productive, you know, whether that is, you know, phone banking for a candidate that you know, identify with, that's awesome. Whether it's, you know, volunteering with a different community group that stands behind, you know, your beliefs, that's awesome. Go out and actually act on what you're feeling towards, because I think that that really allows you to redirect those frustrations. When you also can really meet new people, which I think is really great, that even if it's in a similar organization, chances are going to have different beliefs than you do. And it's really always good to be challenged. One of my favorite quotes has always been, comfort is great, but nothing ever grows there. And that we really do grow from our conversations with people that are different from us. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, so we all thought, you know, very like-minded. We're a very like white city, not a lot of diversity. And I always made a point, at least for myself, I don't want to just be a product of my environment. I actually want to challenge my own beliefs, the beliefs of those that are different of mine, and actually be able to form my own belief system, which has been a huge part of my, you know, personal young adult life in navigating the world. I think is trying to figure out what I believe and don't believe in. And it's a difficult process, let me tell you. I'm, you know, only part of the way there. I am not done yet. I don't think we ever really truly finish, you know, learning about ourselves, learning about our beliefs. But my biggest piece of advice, you know, is learn and keep learning, and don't be afraid to challenge yourself, even if it's privately and in your own space and time. So thank you all.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Julia. And I will say, for some of my own professional advice or just professional experience, I used to run an undergraduate program, and one of the student organizations was the college debate team. And the college debate team, when it was debate season, you were handed your side of the argument and you had to do your research and argue your side of the argument, whether you personally agreed with it or not. And so it's interesting that in these conversations, it's often important and imperative for us to always think about not just our side of an argument, but the other side of the argument that exists. And if we were to actually challenge ourselves to understand all perspectives in a room or in a discussion, those conversations and those dialogues might have less tension and be more in a space of respect and understanding. Professor K, we'd love to hear from you on this particular topic. Again, the question, how can we have discourse and dialogue with respect and civility? And I believe that there's an approach that you're going to take to this in dissecting one of the words. So we really appreciate what it is that you're getting ready to share with us.
Robert Jones Jr. says, "We can disagree and still love each other, so long as your disagreement is not rooted in my oppression and denial of my humanity and right to exist." Robert Jones Jr. Civility, about the rhetoric of liberation. Civility is a word that is that has become a red flag for me. The same with respect. Civility is often required of the oppressed for legitimization. Maybe we won't meet halfway. Maybe we actually don't have common ground. What are we disagreeing about? There are basic non-negotiables that I have. It's going to be hard for me to find space to respect certain positionalities when it comes to how people, how children are treated. Civil discourse, that unfortunate phrase, it means those most harmed by policies have to be forced to listen to justifications and gaslighted on why. Demanding respect and civility is always a cue from those who are causing the most harm. So I'm just asking us to listen to to shape, to move our language, the language that we use, because of how triggering historically those language choices have been. You know, stop telling people not to be angry. There's a lot to be angry about right now. There is entire swaths, large segments of our population that are experiencing a righteous rage. And we have to get comfortable with that rage. You know, stop calling for healing. I don't want to stop call like the powered, right, are always the first ones to call for healing. It's time, not one day after the election, time for healing. Before you can heal, and I say this every time I show up, there has to be atonement first, and then rehabilitation, and then healing. There is a big difference between healing and rehabilitation. So we can't even acknowledge, the first thing that has to happen before healing is that there has to be an acknowledgement that there's a terrible wrongness here. And the process to that healing is a long one. Endurance is required, and commitment. So the last thing that I'll say is to just watch our language and just the historical implications of demands like civility and demands like respect. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor K. And so, Dr. Rios, would you like to weigh in on this as well? How can we have discourse and dialogue with respect and civility?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I for one, always value Dr. K and you know, the righteous indignation in which we are feeling, right? Because I can go back into, I'll just give you a personal anecdotal example. When the George Floyd murder happened, it hit me very differently than Tamir Rice, Phil Castile, Mike Brown. It hit me really different, and I had to sit with why, right? And my this heaviness that was there with me took me back into my own history, in which my uncle was murdered by a police officer, and I didn't recognize that connection until I was doing my own work, right? So my energy, where I was, and the heaviness and the anger that I had at that moment, I didn't know where to put it or where to go, right? But what I did not want is to be a part of more discussions about helping somebody else work through their own racial biases. I wasn't there. I know that I want to have any more conversations about that. I was over it. I was like, how long? You know, makes me want to holler. How long, right? So what Angie's talking about there, I feel what she's saying, you know, very deeply because I wasn't ready to really hear what, you know, reconciliation or healing looks like at that moment. So what I needed at that moment was my tribe. I needed to be around folks who, from a very visceral perspective, could understand without speaking. And I say that because there are times in which, whether it's the election or whether you know, the racial injustices, or whether it's a dialogue that we're having, that's something that's very close to us, and we're engaging with someone who has a very polarized way of thinking about that. It's not just the ideologies, it's the reality of life in which many of us have either lived through or living with currently. So it's not just a simple, well, let's try to reduce this into moving past it. It's not that easy, right? I also want to look to history, as Dr. Kane mentioned. I'm trained in Kingian peace and conflict resolution, and Dr. King has great examples in which how peace, healing, reconciliation in the time of trauma and crisis was strategically utilized to continue the movement forward. Okay, and that's important to note, because we cannot lose sight of the vision based on what's in front of us at the moment either. Okay, there's you know, wonderful example looking at our elders who, you know, have lived through Black codes, who have lived through you know, Jim Crow, and continue to live through so many issues in which we can look to them about how conflict resolution and peacekeeping has been done in the time of crisis, as well as how we don't lose sight of the greater movement in which how we want to see our society. So to go back into more of a smaller scale about regarding the sort of interpersonal conflict, one thing that I'm very mindful of whenever I have any dialogue or discussions with anyone is the use of absolutes. Okay. Whenever I start hearing absolutes, it turns me off. So everyone is, all you this, right? Whenever I start hearing any type of absolutes, I'm out. I'm over it. I'm done. So being very clear that absolutes in any dialogue, we have to check that very, very, very clearly. Maintaining a sense of presence and calmness as well. You know, yes, absolutely, we become activated over specific conversations that hit us really, really deeply. So being mindful that once you're activated, where is this conversation really going to go? So if I'm activated, whether it's about this conversation or something might have triggered my subconscious mind into a previous experience, and I'm triggered, then this is a moment where I think I need to show care and care for myself at that moment, right? That without that, there will be no connection. And also, I think it's very important to, what I visualize whenever I have these really, really tough conversations, I visualize this like this bubble of light. I know it sounds corny, but this is me and I'm entitled to my truth, right? So I visualize this kind of bubble of light around me. And whenever I start hearing things that are really, really like trigger, I just create a visual in my mind that word or those comments does not get beyond this bubble of light. And because what we don't want to do either is internalize someone else's perspective of truth and minimize and diminish what my story and my narrative is. Okay, so I try to be very mindful to visualize that around me, and for that, it's been very helpful in regards to how do I engage in productive dialogue and truly engage in conversations that are building and not destructive.
Again with these gems. Thank you so much, Dr. Rios. Thank you so much, Professor K and Julia, for sharing. And I love the fact that we're having this conversation where in normal vocabulary, the word healing is a positive word, but in this context, healing essentially is received as just get over it, right? But the process for healing is first there is a fall or there's an injury, then it needs to scab. Then the scab falls off, then there is a new skin. And so if we see this process as not something that you have the initial injury or the initial fall or initial challenge, and then the next day there's no more wound, that's not the case. We don't know if the wound gets infected. We don't know how deep it gets. So we have to treat these conversations and these topics in that same way. So thank you again for showing us that in certain contexts, the word healing can be received in a way that is not generally positive on the receiving end, that there needs to be a long-term healing as a long-term plan, not as something that needs to be done quickly. So I thank you all again for weighing in on this. And Professor Dr. Kelly, I want to go to you to see if there are things that you want to add on to the conversation around how can you have discourse and dialogue with respect and civility.
I don't really know that I have too much to add. I mean, I think Professor K and Dr. Rios spoke volumes in their responses to that. I do want to add one thing, though, about the healing. We know that you can't heal if the trauma is still occurring. So that's the one thing I would add to that. That's a concept that I use in my clinical work, but I think that it applies very, very much here too, that you know, while the trauma is still happening, how are we supposed to heal?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Kelly, for sharing that. And so quickly, I'm going to ask every panelist to answer this question and be rather brief if you can. What do we believe are some pieces of advice that you have for community members as we navigate the next several weeks and the next several months? And so let's start with Julia, then we'll go to Dr. Rios, then we'll go to Dr. Kelly, and then we'll go to Professor K.
Awesome, thank you. I think really the best advice that I could give is reiterating what a lot of everyone has stated tonight, and that is one, please have some self-awareness as to how you are feeling going forward and knowing how to act based on what those feelings are. And then two, recognize what you have and do not have control over. And then for what you do have control over, let's focus in on that going forward. Ultimately, there are so many different resources you all specifically as students can have here within the university, like what I've said so far, whether that is CAPS, whether that's student services, whether that is your professors as well. Please utilize those resources to the best of your ability and reach out whenever you feel comfortable or that is necessary so you all can get what you need. And then engage in discussions as necessary, and just remember you all do have power as students over your life, over your decisions, and over politics ultimately. So I just encourage you all to go forward with a little bit of kindness and humility, so that we can be better as a community and engage in the civil discourse to the best of our ability. Thank you.
Thank Dr. Rios.
Yeah, so I think it's really important and over the next few weeks as well, as I mentioned this, and I'm going to stress this again, about self-awareness and boundaries. I know it's kind of like this cliche word, create your boundaries and create your space. But we have to be very, very clear and very, very mindful as to where we are and show care and compassion towards ourselves. There's this beautiful Buddhist quote that says, you just as much as anyone else in the universe is deserving of your own love, right? And I love that because we often give to our children, give to our partner, give to our students, we give to our parents, and then what's left for us. And then you compound that with everything that's happening, and we're suppressing our our true state, and then what we're saying to ourselves, another lie, that I'm okay, I'm good, when no, I'm not necessarily good, and I'm not necessarily okay. So I would strongly emphasize that, as well as just being mindful when we think about boundaries. It's physical space and emotional space. So sometimes it's not the best to engage in these very difficult conversations, especially when you're not in a space to work through it. And I know Angie and Dr. Dr. Kelly mentioned earlier a lot about healing, and I don't want to give healing a bad rap either. Let me just be clear. There's micro moments in healing that we can find, and that's even through when we create boundaries in itself. It's an aspect of healing. It's saying that, yes, I'm a man of color. Yes, I'm passionate about these issues, but I'm creating a boundary with you that I am not going to be teaching you about what racism is like for me right now. And that's a healing boundary for me, right? And also being mindful of saying that I don't have to explain to you what it's like to live in this skin or in this environment at the dinner table to my interracial family or couple or folks visiting, or I'm not willing to express to you about my position of politics in this moment right now. And that is a healing moment in itself. It's a healing micro moment for me, because setting boundaries is also an act of love, quite frankly, right? And so it's very important to I don't want to reduce healing down to one narrative. There are micro moments of healing that we can find within ourselves, such as even maintaining hope, because a lot of times we're feeling too much despair, and we're losing joy out of our day to day, and finding moments where I can have joy, and smiling and being, and doing something silly, turn on the music and just dance by yourself. That way we're able to sort of shift all the heaviness here and move here, so that we're showing some care and compassion towards ourselves, so that we're ready, and we don't have that, emotional fatigue and that burnout. And then we move into desperation, and desperation could lead to very dark thoughts. Dark thoughts lead to other stuff there in absolutism. So I really highly encourage everyone to, if you're not already, get into your own practice of wellness, whatever that means for you. Be very conscious about that is, and using that in being very intentional that I can't compromise this right now. This is where I need to do it most. So I would sort of leave folks with that, if at all possible, to make sure you're mindful that you, just as much as anyone else in the universe, is deserving of your own love.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rios, and thank you so much for Julia, you guys sharing those things and offering the advice of boundaries. I think that's very, very important, especially if we want to show up present to conversations. We have to recognize when we're in a position to and when we're not. And knowing when you're not in a position, or when you need to protect where you are mentally or emotionally about a particular subject matter, is equally as important as showing up and being present and being ready to listen and being ready to share. And that component of things takes a lot of self-reflection. And thank you so much for sharing that as a way as a healing practice, setting boundaries as a practice for healing. Thank you so much for sharing that, Dr. Rios. And so now we are going to hear from Dr. Kelly.
So I'd like to, again, go back to some of the basics. I might risk sounding a little parental here, but we're in a marathon here. This is not a sprint. So we've got to pace ourselves. We have to make sure we're getting sleep. We have to make sure we're getting good nutrition, hydration, that we're not overusing substances, even substances like caffeine, that we are getting exercise, that we are engaging in activities that are nourishing. We're spending time with people who are nourishing rather than depleting. I mean, sometimes you can't help it. Sometimes they're your relatives, but then balance it, keeping some balance in your life. I love what Dr. Rio said about you, by virtue of the fact that you're here, you are deserving of your own love. That to me reminds me, I often will advise clients, please talk to yourself like you would talk to a friend. I know some people, their self-talk is, if they ever talk that way to their friends, they'd have no friends. So that whole self-compassion idea, I think, really resonates for me too. We also, I am going to give a shameless plug to CAPS. I think, Julia, thank you so much for mentioning CAPS. We have a website with a lot of resources on it, including an election stress kit, which you can just click on. It has all kinds of ideas for different activities and ways of coping. And of course, I would encourage any students who are having any kind of difficulties that they need help with to reach out to us at CAPS. Can I just say the phone number? So we have that on the phone number is 973-761-9500. We are doing remote appointments at this point. So any contact with CAPS would start with a phone call. Again, 973-761-9500. I'll leave you with that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kelly. We thank you for that. Thank you for encouraging us to connect to people, places, and things that are nourishing for us. And that's really, really important. And we don't think about the simplicity of just changing the people that you're around, the places that you go, and the things that you do to create healthier spaces for yourself and to nourish yourself, and that being a part of self-care. So thank you so much for sharing those things. And again, I'll just say the phone number one more time for CAPS, for students and those that are on the call to be able to have the resource. The phone number is 973-761-9500. And they are, due to COVID-19, they're starting off with remote appointments so that you are safe and so that they are safe. And so last but not least, we will hear from Professor K. And what I would also like to let you all know as panelists, if you can come up with a one-sentence affirmation that you want to share, that's going to be our final thought. So as Professor K is sharing, come up with one sentence that you want to share to our viewers that is an affirmation for them for this time.
All right, you've been doing such an amazing job, just holding all this and affirming and amplifying everything that's happening. Thank you so much, Yolanda. A successful election is one that is free, fair, respected, and safe. It actually is a long haul. The next 35 days are going to be crucial. And while the vote count is still coming in, there's going to be a lot of anxiety because we don't know the outcome. So everyone on this panel gave everyone here some great access opportunities for how to temper that anxiety. Just about the rhetoric, just to know what might be bubbling up, the idea of contested election results, claims of fraud, the way the court is going to play in, Congress ratifying results. The next 35 days are actually very crucial in terms of what our government is going to look like and what's going to be happening. So just temper your endurance and your stamina to be able to withstand a lot of the language. Make sure you verify what's true and what's not. Fake news, amplify a lot of trolls that are amplifying stories and reactions. So just curate your light bubble. what Dr. Rios was taught. Just curate that light bubble tight. My last thing to say is, everybody's talking about voting in major elections. Get involved in your local elections. One more time, get involved in your local elections. Get involved in your local elections. You run for office. Do you know that anyone can run for office? Can you run for office? Can you vote for the Board of Ed in your town, in your neighborhood? Voting for sheriff, voting for judges. Please investigate in New Jersey what voting down the line means. Get involved in your local elections, show up for that. Those affect your life. Everybody's hyper-focused on the national election, but day to day, your life is affected by what happens in those local elections. Vote in those and run yourself. Thank you.
Dr. K, Professor K, I need you to say that one more time for the people in the back, because we get on the macro level and forget that it starts at the micro. So can you please share again for the people in the back, maybe for people that turned their volume down?
Right. Listen, I bet y'all who did you vote? Get involved in your local elections. They affect your day-to-day life. Your Board of Education dictates what teachers get hired, what those teachers look like, what curriculums are taught and what they're not. Your sheriff, your law enforcement, your judges, who you're giving power. And please run for office. Anybody could. You need like 5 signatures. You got 5 signatures. That's what you need. So get involved, be the change, be about it. Don't just talk about it. That's it.
Thank you so much. We see politics as this thing that is super, super challenging and convoluted. And your mayors, your councilmen and councilwomen, your aldermans, your block party, all of those people that make up your community, again, like Professor K said, they affect your day-to-day. They affect your day-to-day. And who you put in those Senate seats, who you put to represent you at your state level, they really, really are your voice for the things that are going on in these national platforms. And so no election is too small. No election too small. Local dog catcher, it doesn't matter. Vote. Go to your local elections and make yourself aware of what the platforms are for these politicians. They're elected officials, meaning that they need your vote to be able to have the job. And so I'm going to start with Dr. Kelly for your 1-sentence affirmation to the folks here joining us.
I am doing the best that I can.
There you have it. All right, Dr. Rios.
I'm going to share one that I say every day. It might be relevant for some, maybe not for others, but I say every day, I am the architect of my soul. I choose its foundation and build its contents.
And Julia?
Mine would be, we have power over our future and use that power wisely.
And Professor K?
If not now, when? If not us, who?
And mine would be that we have everything on the inside of us to make our wildest dreams come true. And so I am so happy to have shared this discussion with these amazing panelists. If you need their contact information, they're all here at the university so that you can continue these conversations. And I look forward to even more of these strategies for productive dialogue and conflict resolution as we go through this post-election season, and for more conversations in the weeks to come and in the months to come. Remember these affirmations. Remember the points that were shared with you by these wonderful panelists. Be present in your conversations, build communities, create safe spaces to attentively listen to others and offer solutions to all of the problems that we are seeing, all the challenges that we're having, but also remember to be hopeful, to be hopeful. And so if there is nothing else that the panelists would like to leave us with, I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I know that I have learned so much. Thank you so much for affirming and asking questions in our chat, in our Q&A, and we will be inviting you back for more conversations for our post-election series, and again for conversations moving forward with the Office of Student Affairs and with Diversity, Equity, Inclusion. And again, I would like to say thank you, thank you, thank you. Have a great night and go Pirates.